I kind of went through this exercise at one point to really understand, like, okay, what is it that's truly important to me? What is it that defines me, makes me different than anyone else? And from there, then how can I make the impact that I'm trying to do? It was through that kind of personal evaluation and journey that then I came up with these personal values of inspire, influence, and educate.
Hi, thanks for being here and welcome to Season 2 of The Founder Mindset, brought to you by ATB. I'm Leah, your host, and I'm super excited to talk to more founders about the human experience of being an entrepreneur. In this podcast, we're digging into what it really feels like to build a company from nothing. I was a broadcaster for over 20 years, so I've interviewed thousands of people, but entrepreneurs, not that many. And yet, they have the best stories. They're solving big problems and they're creating incredible impact. But it is hard work. So why would they do this? Let's find out. Joining me in studio today is Dr. Amreesh Khanna, dentist and founder of OraQ, the first dental AI to standardize dental assessments, resulting in personalized treatment recommendations for patients. Amreesh, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
This is so fun. I'm so glad we got to connect again after the season finale that we taped live in front of a studio audience.
I know, that was exciting. That was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And I'm so glad that we got these bonus episodes together because I was like, I need to talk more to Amreesh, man. He's got lots to say. So thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
Terrific. So let's go right back to the beginning, shall we? So you're a dentist by trade. You've been a dentist for what, 17 years now?
Yep.
Wow, that's incredible. But you've always been entrepreneurial because you have two dental practices. Is that right?
Yeah, I had two practices. Co-owned two locations of the family of dentists in town here. Interesting journey through my entrepreneurial career there. I think I shared in the live session about how we had our first business hit by the flood. So
right.
That's where I really say, as a healthcare provider, clinician, we're taught very little about business in school. We're very patient focused and treatment focused and that kind of thing. But, dentistry being a private healthcare field, we get a little bit about it, right? But 5 years into me practicing as a dentist and then owning my first practice, 1 year into that, we got hit with a 100-year flood in Calgary.
Wow.
And so our practice was right in the middle of it, just in the Mission area, and, lost the whole practice 1 year into owning it. And literally, was in there trying to bucket water out of the clinic and sandbags and a day that I'll never forget. But
oh my God.
Back to what you said, an entrepreneur. That was what I always share is the moment in my journey that really, I think, shifted me from being a dentist who owned a business to really having to become a business owner, an entrepreneur who practiced dentistry, right? And have to learn so much about the business of dentistry in a way that probably many colleagues of mine never would have to do in their entire lifetime.
No
right?
kidding.
So, yeah.
So what shappened then? So did you lose that practice? Did it ever come back? What happened?
The practice, we were just a couple stairs down, sub-ground, I guess, call it. So the whole first floor of our building had flooded out. And so it was a mess because, nobody really knew how to deal with all that at the time.
Right.
So, and then you're dealing with overland flooding, sewer backup stuff,
Yikes.
all that in your healthcare facility and in a dental practice, all of our, when you lay down in your dental chair and all the stuff that makes everything buzz and hiss, essentially, is all under, right?
Oh.
And so how do you ensure that that's not contaminated, right?
Right,
and so
right.
We essentially had to gut the whole place. We were able to set up, didn't have a practice, had some great colleagues of ours that kind of let us set up shop for a couple months in their locations and take care of our patients. Our patients, obviously, in the area were affected as well, too, so very understanding of the situation.
Right.
Set up a temporary location in a building nearby, just on the 8th floor, and got some equipment and some dental cabinets that were kicking around at one of the distributors' warehouses, and they help us set up something makeshift just to kind of get going. And we were in there while we gutted the whole other place, had to properly go through all the ozone disinfection and all those kind of things, and then plan to rebuild the whole thing. So it took us about 10 months almost by the time we were back into the existing but now new location.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Now that's an introduction to entrepreneurship right there, hey?
Yes, exactly. Just throw you into, taking over an existing business, a kind of a startup dental practice to, HR, finance,
Wow.
marketing, 101 or whatever comes before 101, I guess, right?
No kidding. It occurs to me hearing that story that it's kind of remarkable that you would be like, well, hey, we figured that out. And you know what? Maybe I want to try something else still. Like you still had an itch that needed to be scratched, which is kind of
Yeah,
amazing to me.
I think that's the blessing and the curse of founders. Let's put it that way. Why
Right?
we do crazy things when we go through crazy things, like when do we just stop?
No kidding,
Right?
right? And you just didn't. So tell me then how you went from having these two practices and recovering the flooded out practice to all of a sudden trying to figure out maybe I want to do this whole other thing and this like the OraQ. How did you even get there?
Yeah, so between our practices, multiple dentists, hygienists, assistants, everybody working for us, I started really kind of looking into how tied a business like ours is to the person you see, right? And I mean, we get attached to our doctors, our dentists, our hygienists, like in our world, right? And you want to see them. So they get busy over time. But then if you're trying to scale and grow a business, well, you have other practitioners that need to do it too. So when we went from one location to the second, that's when I realized like I can only be in one place at one time too, right? I need, other people to be, also providing the same level of care, looking at the same type of philosophy around care with our patients. I'm booked out, a month and a half, producing at a high revenue level, taking care of my patients. But how do I get my other doctors and other practitioners to also see and practice that way?
Right.
So, at the same time, this all kind of started happening kind of just around the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
really.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my own little education platform that I was, formalizing as well too, where I'd be working with dentists who'd say, hey, can you help me on some business or clinical coaching and development because of all the crazy things I'd been through prior? How can I help lend a hand and look at things differently? But when it comes to replicating our minds, like, when you have that perfect care provider of yours that you're like, hey, well, they can't get me in for 3 months. Wouldn't it be awesome if they could get me in next week, right? Well, we
Yeah.
have to be able to replicate that way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
And that's the hard part because in healthcare, we kind of do it with just continuing education and mentorship and things like that. But implementation is where the rubber meets the road. And statistically, when I looked into this, it's like 11% of what we learn actually gets implemented.
11?
11%. So you have to kind of keep learning again. And that's
Wow.
why we keep kind of reading the same books or doing different things to develop ourselves, whether it's as leaders or business owners. In our world, in clinical care, like you're doing a lot of continuing education and then you learn a little bit, you put it into practice, and then you're back into your busy old habits, and then you're doing it again, maybe 6 months later at another course. And little by little, you keep getting better and better, right?
Huh.
But I'm like, there's got to be a better way
Right.
because that's just not a way to accelerate, implementation. And ultimately, if we're losing dollars because of that in a business and patients are losing out on outcomes, we have to solve it, right?
Right.
So started diving into that whole world and saying, how do we make sure that, regardless of your dentist's training, years of experience, where they were trained, where they're from, anything like that, like how do we make sure we have the same level of care from a business perspective? If we're not looking at everything in a patient, I mean, we're leaving lost treatment opportunities on the door for what's best for the patient, but that's dollars that we're not
Mm-hmm.
even talking to patients about.
Mm-hmm.
So it quantifies to a major business lost opportunity in a dental business. So that's where I'm like, we got to find a better way. And so I started diving in this whole AI world back in 2019, 2020. When the pandemic happened, I had a little more time on my hands because
Sure.
for a couple months, all of our dental practices were closed.
Mm-hmm.
I went back to University of Alberta where I did my dental school and said, I've got this idea and could we look at machine learning applications? I don't really know anything about AI. I'm just starting to educate myself too on clinical data and start to draw patterns in a different way than we're traditionally thought to think about patients' findings.
Mm-hmm.
And worked with Amy, Alberta Machine Intelligence
Mm-hmm.
Institute, on a technology validation, and then went to the market and said, hey, is this just a me problem?
Right.
Or do other people also think this is a problem? And once I got all those check boxes, then I, had a resounding yes to all three that, this is something that needed solving. We were doing it the same old way for how many years?
Right.
And so that's when OraQ was born.
I love this story because it fits that same pattern where an entrepreneur will identify there's got to be a better way, right? But what I'm so curious about is that difference between going, there's got to be a better way, and thinking, okay, someone's going to have to figure that out. And instead, you're like, I'm going to figure this out myself. Why did you think that, you were the one to solve this problem, or you just were curious enough that you had to tackle it?
That's a good question. Sometimes we want to just call it hang up the drill or whatever you want to call it when it's easier to do that and like say, hey, well, somebody else is going to solve this. I'm happy and I'm doing good in my life here. Why do I need to go down this crazy world, right? But I think my experiences prior, especially when I look back, like the flood incident, was you had to make a decision quickly. Like, do I want to just call it whatever and say, it's okay, fine, it's a loss to, some businesses go well and some don't, and there's luck and there's this and that, and just move on. And, hey, well, I can easily just get a job as a dentist somewhere else or buy another business or whatever, right?
Right.
Or do I want to figure out how to solve this and not kind of give up, or that resilience side of things, right? And I think from there, maybe that's where that curiosity maybe stems, I think, is maybe the right word. Now I think of it, like, I don't think I had anything that told me, like, I'm the guy to figure this out at the time, right? But I was curious enough to say, I'm curious enough that I need to try to figure this out. Yeah. And then see where it takes me.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that.
Yeah.
Curiosity. Big fan of curiosity. Yeah. Journalists are very curious people. I love it. Okay. So tell me a little bit about the birth of OraQ specifically, and, when you sort of made it a business and in fact, what it is.
Yeah. So as I was sharing it, that, while I was doing call that clinical validation, technology validation, market validation, I was still practicing, full time as a dentist as well, too. Once I got those 3 check boxes through that journey too, like, I started realizing, okay, needs to be a tech company. What is a tech company? I hear about it all, but, nothing I'd ever dabbled in before, right?
Yeah.
And learning a lot about it, even from Amy, Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, and just different people, and just started getting connected with good people, right? And I think, we talked about that a lot in the live session about, the community and the village that we have here, I think in Calgary and in Alberta. And it's just, I think when you take the time to actually, see the clouds part a little bit and watch what's going on, you can't really always explain what's going on. And it's easier to do that when life is not so crazy. I'll put it that way. So in my earlier days, I would be like, whoa, I met this one person. And all of a sudden, months later, somehow that person connected me to that person. And that person was like exactly who I needed at the time, because I had a question. I'm like, I don't know what to do next, right? Like, great, I figured out there's some value to this.
Right.
I figured out AI is the right technology to employ, but now what do I do, right? And so how do we start kind of connecting the dots with the right people? And, my co-founders got brought onto this, and just, advisors and mentors that kind of said, okay, here's maybe how I can help you a little bit further to figure out what you got to do. And you got to define your problem and your solution, and start going down that whole pathway. And then, I know somebody else here that maybe had set up a software company before or something. Let me connect you with them and talk to them, right? Yeah. So just kept kind of going, I guess, where the universe was taking me. And then little by little, then you start hearing about what you're doing, enough so that I think people were validating that I was on the right track, but had a lot to figure out still, versus like, I don't know, you need to go figure out a lot of this before you move forward.
Oh, okay. Right? So early validation.
Yeah. So validation in the sense that, I wasn't out to lunch. Let's put it that way. Otherwise, maybe would I have gone down this route?
Right. So you're onto something.
Yeah, onto something, but there was a lot to still come.
To figure out.
And so enough of the initial early validation that said, okay, I need to figure out how to now take the next step of building out an MVP, assembling a team, starting to raise capital, formalize this as a company. Yeah. And that's when everything formalized in 2021.
2021.
So,
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So where's OraQ at now?
Yeah, so fast forward, it's 3 to 4 years here now. I mean, we built out a big team. I have 2 co-founders, another dentist, and our CTO. A great team of many who are here in Alberta, and some, other parts of Canada, US, overseas. We built out our MVP. We had, tested this in market. We got the validation there, went to the next step to build a commercial solution, got Health Canada, FDA approvals, launched live in the market at our first, set of paying customers last year, started to get partners in the distribution space and, dental education space and things like that. So now we are pushing on that big journey of sales and continue to grow our, the market that is excited about what we've brought to be able to provide a different, unique solution now.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And maybe just for the listeners, or help us understand exactly what OraQ does.
Yeah. So, sharing that kind of inconsistency picture again with, what happens between doctors and how we look at a patient, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because this podcast is not for dentists, but everybody listening is a patient of a dentist,
course.
Right? And the story that so many patients have is that one dentist told me one thing, another dentist told me something else. I don't know if they're trying to sell me on something that I don't need.
Right?
So why is that happening? Why do you have one doctor tell you need Invisalign and orthodontics and the other one's like, no, just watch this, like everything's good.
Right?
And it's because there's a lot of gray, right? Like there's a lot of gray in terms of how we bring our own subjective opinions to a patient's assessment. And we're not dealing with life and death here, right? So some of this is very preventative and early intervention type in nature. So could you watch it till it's a problem? Yeah. Could you intervene early? Yeah. But how do you know when to make that right decision, right? And so that's where OraQ comes in, is that when you see your dentist now, we really believe in standardizing a comprehensive patient evaluation, bringing medical and dental, the connection together. So looking at a patient as a whole and then evaluating key areas. We have 7 AI models that assess a patient into what's called a wellness profile. So now we equip the dental team with key insights on that patient that they might not be thinking about even before you're in the door. So that now the dental team's like, whoa, I never thought there was something going on in, Leah's bite. Like maybe I should be talking to her about this when she's in today.
Right.
Because I've just been focused on the cavities or the gum health here, right? So now we can open up that conversation, standardize how we look at the patient so that if we're not looking at the right data, how can we make right, insight around it, right? And then believe in full transparency and ownership of that oral health data back in the hands of a patient. So with a click of a button, we can give you your wellness profile and help connect the dots for you to understand the why. So now if one dentist is telling you need Invisalign and the other one's told you previously that you didn't, you can say, hey, well, you got some risk here with your bite and the way your teeth are positioned, is causing further compromise that if we fast forward this picture 10 years down the road, this is what this could look like. So do you need this today? I mean, it's up to you.
Right.
But if we did that now and got your teeth in a better position, it might save you from losing bone or having gum recession. And also, yeah, sure, byproduct, it might look a little nicer, but that's not your number one concern right now. But this other stuff might be, right?
So it's really this idea of personalized medicine, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah, precision care and just bringing that whole view. And from a vision perspective, what I'm really excited about is truly like when you look at what's happening in the medical world right now, personalized medicine, there's this whole concept of the digital twin. And so I'm excited about bringing the first of its kind dental digital twin.
Whoa,
so that's
dental
what I want to
twin.
grow and build here, right?
You heard it here first.
Yeah. So that, because we get asked all the time, like patients will say, hey, can I wait on doing that crown until my insurance turns over next year or what, right? And
of course.
How do I know what's going to happen between that time and what you're going to bite on and, break a tooth or not and these kind of things, right? But if we can use the power of this data effectively, we can simulate and understand where you are going and how that's different than the next patient and the next patient, right? So ultimately, I think that's the real power in where we're going with all this, the predictive side of things and being able to understand how you get healthier or decline in health.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. Do I have this right that you've now raised $4 million?
We have raised $4 million, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How does that feel?
It's crazy when you say it out loud, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it's a long journey to get there as a founder, right?
Yeah.
Definitely has been a big journey to get there. A big part of having great people believe in what we're doing and the vision and where we're going, especially at these early stages, and put money behind us so we can make it happen.
No kidding. The one thing you mentioned when we talked on the stage was the feeling specifically about that first check, like just what it feels like. You get in your car and you're like, wow, I just did that. Talk to me a little bit about what that feels like.
Yeah. So again, when I learned that I need to raise capital.
Right. Oh, this is part of the job.
Yeah, exactly. And then thought at the time, jokingly, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to raise capital for a couple months and when we done my whole round, it's all going to be good. To realize how so many people will say as a founder and the CEO, you're never done fundraising and you're never done communicating what you're doing, right?
Totally.
And so learn that now. But that initial summer when we formalized this all, and I said, okay, now I need to like hire my first data scientist, and it was all about like building out on the engineering and development side, because I had zero idea how to code or do anything
For sure.
like that. I can understand the business piece and the clinical and things like that, but I can't build a software, right? And so starting to create like a deck and creating some form of a presentation that, I could circulate to other people involved. And my initial set of investors were other dentists, right? And who also saw what we're doing here and said, this is definitely needed in the marketplace, and I'm willing to put some money behind this to help you, right?
Yeah.
So there's a colleague of mine that, I had approached and been talking about this, and, here I am now saying we need to raise big dollars. And we were, I learned about a cap table, and I know that I got to minimize numbers of people on my cap table. So how does that equate to a minimum check size and all these things? And what is my ask, right? And walking away from when that first dentist said, I believe in you, and here you go, and giving me like, I'm going to his office and picking up a money order bank draft or whatever it would have been at the time from him, saying like, there you are. And it was a big check. I mean, it was $50,000. Wow. So it was not something small. So I'll never forget that. I mean, pretty much driving home, crying along the way that I can't believe that somebody actually gave me some money. You know what I mean? So that's a feeling, I think, as a founder, whether you bootstrap it or not, or whatever you're doing, as soon as somebody, gives you their hard-earned money around it, I think, it's something that I take very, very seriously, because I do take it to heart. I'm like, these people are like believing in me, right? And, of course, they're believing in the concept and the traction and all these things that we do. But in the early stages, they're believing in the person in front of them, right?
Yeah, they sure are. Wow, what a feeling. I can't even imagine. That must be incredible. Amazing. The Founder Mindset is brought to you by ATB Financial. In the fast-paced world of tech, your banking needs evolve as quickly as your industry. Whether you're just starting out or aiming to reach new heights, ATB Financial is dedicated to supporting tech companies every step of the way. Partner with ATB Financial for a banking solution that grows with your business. I ask every founder, I said, okay, obviously there are many very pivotal moments in your journey building your company. I asked you the same question in the pre-interview. If you think about a moment that was extremely pivotal, that was almost like a do or die moment, or that it was just something massive that you had to deal with, what comes to mind for you?
I think when you asked me to prep for this, I said there's like so many moments.
Most founders say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, phew, if it's not just me, right?
No, it's really not.
Okay. But yeah, it's like, it's hard to, pinpoint sort of one exact moment to share, I think, but there's a lot you go through in trying to build something from nothing.
Yeah.
And, I will share and say, like, this journey of what I'm doing now and what I've gone through bringing OraQ to market and stuff, it's probably one of the hardest things like I've ever done, right? And so there are the swings of the ups and downs, and the swings of like those moments where like there are do or die moments in very big ways sometimes, like that can completely shape the next direction of where you're going, right? If something goes the way you anticipate, all of a sudden it opens up all these doors. If it doesn't, at the time, it at least feels like everything is shut, right?
Yeah. So as the non-entrepreneur over here, I'm thinking to myself, how do you even emotionally process that? Like, how do you not curl up in a corner and just go fetal in the corner? Or do you? Maybe you do. Yeah.
Let's put it this way. I've had moments where I am curled up and like, why am I doing this? Like, I was practicing dentist, making a very healthy income,
right?
Owning a business, multiple businesses. Like, why did I do this? Yeah. Like, this is kind of crazy, because I go from that to like, a poor startup founder kind of thing. But it is because whatever you end up doing, you do believe in it that much. So even when I've had those like really down moments, days, sometimes even multiple days or weeks, right? Where you're just like, this is like nothing is going the way I want, right? Yeah. The itch that you talk about is like, you feel that there's like, what else would I do? Do you know what I mean? Like, because I got into this in the first place because of that itch or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So as much as you're down, you're like, okay, well, this sucks. But then the alternative of not going forward with it just doesn't feel comfortable either,
Yeah.
right? Like you want to, because you believe in it that much. That's why you've sacrificed so much and done so much. So it's just, how do you pick yourself up? How do you find those moments of validation again? How do you find those moments of talking to the right people that help bring you up, to your mentors, your advisors, your friends, your family, right? That are like, no, you're on something here, right? And that's why I've always tried to be very conscious as a founder to say, I can't be going into these things with blinders on, because, if I'm blinded by my own ambition and other signs are telling me I'm not in the right direction, well, then I'm just truly crazy. Right?
Yeah.
So,
right.
So,
Yeah.
so I have to be like so aware. But then when I'm aware, then I see, okay, there are all these signs still. Like I'm struggling with a certain challenge right now or a do or die moment. But look at this validation. Look at that validation. Like that's telling me I'm on the right direction. We just got to solve this.
Right.
Right. And you have people believing in you and your company, right? So have they seen me and seen me down and had those vulnerable moments? Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
But then I also know, like, I can't be down for their livelihoods. Like they're believing in me. They're my employees, my team. Like I got to get up, because that's the only way they're going to get up.
Right.
Right. Otherwise this ain't going anywhere.
Right.
So
now that you've ridden that wave a few times, how do you think about moving through those challenges that you know are inevitable now?
I was on a couple other podcast interviews a few months ago. Tim Sweet here from town and stuff, right? And talking to even just other people in the ecosystem and friends and colleagues. And we're talking about like how we frame our understanding around what we call failure, I think, right? And so I had a really interesting conversation with Tim about that, because I'm not wired to think that failure was acceptable.
Right.
And as a healthcare practitioner, you can't fail with something that you treat a patient with and assume that, oh, it's okay, we tried it, it's all good, they'll be back.
Right.
Like there's serious consequences
Yes.
to the wrong decision here. And it's not just a consequence to me, it's a consequence to somebody else and their health, right?
Yeah.
So we're really wired from that, I don't know if it's health or science or whatever, and maybe you have other founders in totally other industries that are wired the same, but I found in my own experience, like, it's like everything has to be like perfect. You got to be right. Like you got to make that right decision. But in this world of like startups, like you can't do that really. Like you have to be okay with something not working or something not going the way you want. And taking that step back and understanding that is something that I'm constantly working on myself, because if I don't, I put so much pressure on myself that it's fully drains you, exhausts you, wipes you, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not there by any means, but I'm trying to be like, okay, listen, like, whatever you call it, a failure or a decision that didn't go the right, or some direction of the, company, like some things are in our hands and some things are not, right? But like how we frame our own mindset around it, and then, making sure that we are actually testing things and trying things, and whatever that is, messages in the market or something in the product, but quickly, the whole fail fast bit, right?
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's like, yes, like how do I think, cope with it in a way or set myself up to it. So I had to change my mindset, first of all, and that's what I'm working on around it. And you call it the founder's mindset.
The founder mindset,
right?
for a reason, yeah.
But it's like, I have to be okay with every decision not being the right decision, right? And then learn and make the right decision after, and pivot quickly and validate what you need to validate and keep going. But then having, I think, the right support around you, to taking the time to actually do what you need for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, on those tough days, like go to the gym, get enough sleep, even though you can't sleep.
Right.
Like whatever it is, right? Like, do things to remain healthy, because whatever it is will pass, and you're going to be on to the next thing soon enough, right?
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about this world of entrepreneurship, is this idea that there's no real failure. It's really just learning. right? So that didn't work. All right, let's try something else. And it's like there's not this sort of pressure in terms of failure, and at least not in the experience that I've had speaking with founders. They don't think of it that way. To your point, it's this mindset that's different where they just are like, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else. What did we learn? Try something else. What's next?
Yeah.
And they just keep moving forward. Like it's never this giant thing. It just is a learning. And then you learn and you move forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's really exciting, really creative.
Yeah, I think you need it to have
Yeah.
to have innovation and disruption, because it's not a 9 to 5
No,
kind of thing, right?
no,
So,
no.
it's you're actually doing things that have never been done before.
Yeah.
So there is no right answer half the time.
Right? Exactly.
So, yeah.
Which brings me just to this next question, which I ask every person that sits in the chair too, which is, to your point, being an entrepreneur is not 9 to 5. It is all consuming. And it often consumes the entire founder and their family and friends and support network and that kind of thing. So how does being an entrepreneur affect your personal life or your family life?
Yeah, it definitely affects it in many ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I have an amazing wife who's also a dentist.
Awesome.
And 2 young girls, 6 and 8.
Oh.
And so they've been very much involved in this journey with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I had to go full on this and figure out, okay, this is going to affect our family in a big way.
Right.
Something's positive. Hey, I'm not in the dental chair and stuck in an office all day now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I am virtual, I'm remote. I can maybe be more available at times, which doesn't always happen. But, it was funny because I think my kids probably didn't totally understand why I stopped wearing scrubs and leaving the office and going out in the morning and coming back at night. And all of a sudden they're like, why is this guy in his office at home still? Right? Yeah. And now all of a sudden he's talking on the computer all day long, right?
Right.
So they definitely see things in a different way.
Sure.
But my wife has been a key support through all of this,
Mm-hmm.
because without her, I couldn't do any of this. And she's involved in the company too, and so many things in the background.
Yeah.
But it's also like without her and her taking care of the kids, like
Mm-hmm.
how could I do any of this stuff, right? When you
Right.
have a family, I'm not a founder that's 20 years old.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And so how do you do all these things when you have all these other priorities in your personal life around it? So you can't do it alone. There's no way.
No, there's no way.
Yeah.
The supports are essential.
Yes.
Yeah, no question. You briefly mentioned this, but I am very curious, and I ask all founders this too. How do you stay well? what do you personally stay mindful of to make sure that you're okay so that you can continue to build and lead your team?
I was fortunate that, brought up in an East Indian household and East Indian parents and stuff. My mom was a yoga and meditation teacher.
Oh, amazing.
And introduced us to that side of things at an early age. You don't really know necessarily what you're doing or why, but giving us some, emotional and nervous system regulation type things, right? Whether it's just breathing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've always understood the value of that and know how important it is to keeping those anxious, crazy moments in check, or at least I know what I can go to. And how do we bring that into how we, do our day-to-day leadership in general too? Because, I think I shared one of the programs I did, and it was actually during the pandemic. There was a program put on by NYU, and it was supposed to be kind of a hybrid program. It ended up being all virtual, called the Inner MBA.
Mm-hmm. At NYU, yeah.
Yeah, and it was about socially conscious leadership. But the first part of it is understanding yourself, right? And the EQ side of things, and understanding how are you showing up. Because if I'm not in a good state, how am I going to show up to my family? How am I going to show up to my team? How am I going to show up to my clients? So I have to keep going back to those things, right?
Yeah.
And so, whether that's yoga, meditation, different types of breathing stuff, staying active from a physical activity perspective, trying to find the times to take away and get, check out from your inbox and Teams and all that kind of stuff too, right? Is I think so important, so you can deal with the crazy highs and lows, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're very mindful about that you do make an effort to do all that. Not that you get to do it as probably as much as you may want to or need to, but you're mindful of it at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's something that I definitely is part of my day-to-day or week-to-week in some way, shape, or form, for sure. And it had to be, because otherwise the craziness of this journey is if I didn't know how to deal with those crazy moments, like you were talking about the do or die moments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I don't get anxious. Doesn't mean I don't get stressed out.
Of course.
I'm not like a Zen monk or anything like that.
Of course.
But at least I have some tools at my disposal to understand or check in and know I'm not on today. I'm a little off.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
That's amazing. It's good to have those tools in the toolkit.
yes.
I know something else that really drives you, Amreesh, are your values. In fact, when I was poking around on your website, they're right up there, right at the front, inspire, influence, and educate. Can we talk a little bit about those? Why are
Yeah.
those so important to you?
So before OraQ, when you're talking again about like, why do you start things like this or whatever, there was something that actually kind of struck in me before that I'm like, I knew I wanted to do something more to make an impact in a bigger way. Not that what I was doing as a dentist wasn't enough or something, right? There was just that itch again, right? Like that.
Yeah.
I felt like there was something calling me to do more. I believe in, again, having the right people around you, been part of different coaching and business development groups, have my own, business coaches, mentors and things, Tech Canada and different people that helped me along that journey. And it's through that I kind of went through this exercise at one point to really understand, like, okay, what is it that's truly important to me? What is it that defines me, makes me different than anyone else? And from there, then how can I make the impact that I'm trying to do versus seeing that somebody else does this, I should just try to do that. So it was through that kind of personal evaluation and journey that then I came up with these personal values of inspire, influence, and educate. And I found if I looked at my past things that I did and what I was doing in the present and where I want to go in the future, those three values kind of spoke or came out in every way.
Oh.
Right. So at the time I had no idea anything about OraQ when I made those, right?
Right.
But then I was like, for me, then I know that became a guiding principle to me as a person, just like core values are a guiding principle within a company.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I started with me figuring out me first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So I'm assuming that's what led to things like Adept and Cause to Smile. Why don't we talk about those briefly? Let's start with Adept.
Yeah, sure.
What's
so
Adept?
The Adept is my dental clinical and business coaching training program. So I provide continuing education to other dentists and help them on their journey. I really believe going through what I did again, I really focus on aligning personal, professional, financial goals, like with whatever it is you do, because no matter, running a dental business and doing that day to day is not easy either. And it's like a lot of stress and a lot of things behind what's procedures with your patients, your team, you're running a big, business as well, right? But then going back to like the why, because after a while, like anything that you keep doing, you can be great at it, but it's kind of like, well, what's the point, right? Am I trying to grow my business just because I think I need to grow it and make more money? But what's the expense of that, right?
Right.
So really helping other people start looking at that from a strategic planning perspective and execution perspective, threading these things in, and then how to look at clinical and business. I'm a numbers geek. So before OraQ days, like I did a lot of other, educating myself and doing certification programs on the financials and understanding P&Ls and balance sheets. And these are all things that most dentists don't really look at.
No.
You rely on your accountants to do that stuff,
Sure.
right? But how do you drive growth if you don't understand this stuff yourself? So that's where I really focus on there, helping on a one-to-one basis with dentists on clinical and business coaching. And it just formed because I had colleagues that were coming to me and saying, hey, can you help me with this? Like, I'm running this problem with my business. Do you know what to do? Or, hey, I want to learn how to do this procedure to help my patients. Where do I go? And I'm kind of like, well, I can help you.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of, I was like, okay, when I help them, people actually are inspired, influenced, and educated.
Amazing.
So
look at that.
Let's create this into something formal. And I find that part really fulfilling too, when I can help somebody else make a difference in their journey too.
Yeah.
So that's Adapt. Community also really important to me as well. And that's what Cause to Smile is all about, is how do we do good beyond the walls of our clinics. Been involved in various types of giving initiatives, all the way from dental school and founding a student-run clinic at the U of A, to some scholarships in honor of my late father, to support these students who run that in Edmonton. And then I want to find a way to give back. It's just another bucket that I found, no matter what else I was doing, doesn't get filled unless I'm doing something to feed that. So Cause to Smile is all about how do we bring the dental community and larger business community together to support local grassroots needs. So we identify needs that exist within the community outside of dental care, because dentists are all doing great things to give back to their patients, and there's a lot of amazing dental charities. But how do we just bring people around other ways to connect, learn as a community, get together as a community, and give back to some organization that's in need?
That's incredible. It's also a lot, Amreesh.
Yes,
We've just covered a lot of stuff
Yes.
that you're doing. Does that ever occur to you? Like, wow, maybe I'm doing a little too much. Have I bit off a little more than I can chew here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. But then I've also just had to become comfortable with, I can't do it all the time.
Right.
And what's most important to me, my family, and right now, most importantly, all my time is dedicated to OraQ. So how do I keep nudging away on these other things that I'm doing and just do the best I can?
And do the best you
Right?
can.
So,
amazing.
yeah.
And we all benefit. How wonderful. I mean, you obviously already talked about this a little bit, but I'm curious just to see what you would say in response to the notion of impact. And I know it's come up a bit, but at Thinner Labs, we talk about creating meaningful human impact. And that's sort of one of the foundational cores of not only our investment thesis, but how we work together and the companies that we support. And I know you've thought a lot about impact. And I'm wondering how you think about impact. When you think about creating impact in the world, even maybe personally or through any of your various initiatives that we've discussed, how do you think about impact?
I want to be able to walk away knowing that I made a difference in a way that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't there to do that, right? And so people talk about, okay, what would you say at your funeral and what would you do in those ways? And I think that's something that is like has been core to why did I try to create my personal values? Why did I kind of go into this? Why do we take these crazy plunges? Is that I want to do something that really made a difference. I don't know what that was going to be when I went on that journey, right? This could be very well it, right? Like, hey, leading the charge in this way and incorporating AI in dentistry is like a huge beginning here for healthcare and in my profession in dental, right?
Yeah.
But knowing that ultimately what I'm doing is going to help people and have the power of helping people all around the world. Like when I was owning dental practice, I was like, okay, like maybe I want to own more dental practice. I got to see more patients and I can help them with my care that I'm providing. And if I own more practices, I can help more patients. And like, that's a way to serve more people. But that didn't really like happen, probably because there was a different plan for me, right? And so if this was the plan, this actually allows me to help people in like a global scale and like one day be able to think that OraQ could be in a dental office anywhere in the world and in communities and places that we're bringing that ability to take care of patients in a way, like we call it the mind and wisdom of 1,000 dentists. Like if you could bring that to communities or countries in the world that don't have the technology or the resources that we're blessed with in North America, the patient can still be evaluated in a way to know that there's something going on, right? So
it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love that. Well, as we wrap up these conversations, I always end on the same two questions. And you know about these questions. They're forward-thinking questions. So you're the co-founder. You're writing the story for OraQ. How do you hope it goes?
As founders, we put so much energy, blood, sweat, and tears into what we do. So you obviously want to see it go through, right? And so, when we talk about all those ups and downs and all those things, like, I think we're at this really exciting and critical stage of our company that, there's just so many like amazing things ahead of us or amazing potential people I'm speaking to all around the world today that you're just like, if one of those clicks, like what would this look like go forward, right? Yeah. So I would love to be writing that story to know, hey, and all those times when I'm sitting here like, oh my God, like, we're doing good, but it just, how do you see that, little thing that happened to, take you on that hockey stick forward?
Yes.
That to be able to look back and say, there was those times when I was just like, oh my God, like I'm getting close to done here, right? And to know that I did hang in long enough and I did, believe long enough and know that, yes, that's all I needed to do. And hey, that one thing was right there that I didn't realize at the time, but that was like the next big thing, right? And, I shared in the beginning about, I think it was easier in the earlier days when things were less chaotic for me to step away and see the clearing between the clouds and see all the orchestration of all of this happening and be truly grateful for that. And, I just want to be able to look back and say, wow, it happened. And look, right? So
yeah. It happened. It happened. I love that. And then think about yourself personally. As the founder, as the co-founder of this company, how do you hope your personal story goes? What would you like to tackle in the future?
When I was sharing the thing about the personal value story piece too, like I wanted to be someone in something that made an impact and had an influence and helped people in some way, right? And at the time, was it like, did I own more dental practices, or did I become this dental educator on some clinical care or something like that, right? But for those things, I would still be one of many. And however life took me here to go this way, I'm now one of a few, right? And so wherever this goes, like, I hope that I can take, my journey and my story and help others with this, whether they're other founders, whether they're other people in, say, healthcare or dental business, even, because that's not a typical pathway for clinicians to go, right? And help them know that, hey, you've got an idea and an ability to do something. Where do you start? What do you do? Right? And just like even my kids to be able to see, like, it's okay to take a chance and a step, and, the thing about failure that we talked. So those are the things that I'll feel for them to especially grow up one day and be like, yeah, like, I saw this all happening and it was okay, and I could do this and I can do that and I can do that. I still have a foundation of this great education behind me, but I can do things and I can shape the world and change it. And you need people like that, as crazy as we are, right? So
we absolutely do. We absolutely do. Amreesh, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me on the podcast, and love what you're doing and everything for the community, and bringing so many great people together on your podcast as well. So I hope this gave some valuable things for your listeners, and I really appreciate you having me on here.
As the lead investor in Thin Air Labs Fund 1, Sandstone Asset Management believes in building the commons through innovative founders who are creating meaningful positive impact both locally and globally. Sandstone is doing just that by backing the next generation of emerging entrepreneurs. Picture this: a founder's startup goes from idea to international impact, supported by strategic investors who believed in their vision. That's the power of Sandstone's approach. Sandstone doesn't just manage wealth, they cultivate it, supporting founders at all stages. Visit sandstoneam.com to learn how Sandstone builds legacies that last. The Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund finds, fuels, and fosters opportunities in sectors like aerospace, agribusiness, and tech, creating a resilient and diverse economy, attracting world-class talent, and solidifying Calgary as a launchpad for innovators. Discover more at opportunitycalgary.com.